He was once the most feared monarch in Europe, bold, ruthless, unstoppable. But in the final days of his reign, King Henry VIII was no longer the man who defied Rome and changed the course of history. As his body decayed and his enemies circled, Henry faced something he could never conquer: time. Stay with us as we uncover the haunting final days of a king whose shadow still looms over England. And if you enjoy true stories from the dark corners of royal history, consider joining us by hitting subscribe. By the winter of 1546, Henry VIII was no longer the towering warrior king who once dazzled courts with his strength and charisma. He was obese, more than 380 pounds, plagued by festering leg ulcers that refused to heal. His courtiers could smell the rot before they saw the king. Every movement caused him pain, and he had to be wheeled from room to room in specially designed chairs. Yet even in this state, his grip on power never loosened. He ruled with fear, suspicion, and a pen that signed death warrants like invitations. As Henry's body weakened, his mind turned darker. Those around him whispered cautiously. Each step in court could mean promotion or destruction. He trusted no one completely, not even his closest advisors. The ghosts of his past haunted him, and Bullen's execution, the betrayal of Thomas More, the rebellion he crushed in the north. Every face in his court reminded him of blood he had spilled to keep his throne. He rarely smiled now, and when he did, it chilled the room more than it warmed it. Catherine Parr, his sixth and final wife, walked a dangerous tightrope. She was intelligent, educated, and religious in a way that made Henry's conservative advisors nervous. One wrong word about scripture, one whispered accusation of heresy, and she could meet the same fate as in Bullen. Yet Catherine played her cards wisely. She soothed Henry's ego, nursed his wounds, and read to him from the Bible, not to challenge him, but to comfort him. She survived because she understood what Henry had become: a dying lion, still capable of killing. Behind the velvet curtains of the palace, factions warred in silence. Protestant reformers and Catholic loyalists circled Henry like vultures, each trying to control the future of England by influencing the dying king. Edward Seymour, uncle to Prince Edward, plotted to ensure his nephew's rise. Bishop Gardiner, loyal to Rome, pushed back with equal force. Everyone spoke in riddles. Smiles were masks. And the closer Henry drifted toward death, the sharper the knives became, aimed not at him, but at whoever would hold the kingdom after him. Prince Edward, Henry's only legitimate son, was just 9 years old. Pale, quiet, and delicate, the boy was being groomed to inherit a kingdom soaked in blood. Henry rarely saw his son, but made it clear Edward would rule, no matter what. The boy was surrounded by tutors, guards, and manipulators, each of them with plans of their own. Henry, paranoid and suspicious, changed his will multiple times in those final months. But his message remained clear: this kingdom will not return to the old ways. My son is the future. By now, Henry's leg ulcer had become more than a wound. It was a symbol of everything collapsing. It oozed constantly, reeked through thick bandages, and left a trail of blood wherever he was carried. Surgeons dared not touch it too often, fearing they'd be blamed for his death. Even the simple act of standing was agony. He barked orders from his bed, red-faced and sweating, while servants wept in silence from the stench. The king who once jousted in shining armor was now trapped by flesh he could no longer command. In his final weeks, Henry summoned his council more frequently, but his voice had lost its thunder. His words, once commands etched in fear, now came out wheezing, broken. Yet he remained dangerous. In a final flash of cruelty, he ordered the execution of the Earl of Surrey, once a decorated noble, simply for seeming too ambitious. It was a reminder to all: the king may be dying, but he still held the sword, and he would swing it until his last breath, even if it meant dragging others into the grave with him. Henry feared chaos after his death, so he tried to choreograph it in advance. He drafted secret instructions for his burial, for Edward's protection, and for the council that would rule until the boy came of age. But he didn't trust anyone enough to tell them everything. His will was locked in layers of legal traps. Only a handful of men knew the full truth, and even they whispered in corners. Henry wanted to control England from beyond the grave. But even he knew power slips fast when the hand holding it turns cold. On the night of January 27th, 1547, the palace was silent except for the sound of labored breathing. Henry lay in his bed, soaked in sweat, barely able to speak. No priest dared ask if he wanted last rites. It was treason to say the king was dying unless he said it first. He drifted in and out of sleep, whispering names from his past, wives, friends, enemies, all blurred into one fading memory. And in those final hours, the man who changed a kingdom died without confession, without apology, and without peace. In the early hours of January 28th, 1547, King Henry VIII took his final breath. There were no trumpets, no final declarations, just silence. The room held its breath, as if even the walls feared what came next. Servants waited outside, unaware the most powerful man in England was now a lifeless body. For hours, no one announced his death. Why? Because until everything was in place, the successor confirmed, the council secured, they feared the kingdom might tear itself apart. So, even in death, Henry held the throne just a little longer. It wasn't until the next day that the court was officially informed. Messengers moved with precision. Edward Seymour, now in control, delivered the news carefully. The king is dead. Long live the king. The boy Edward VI had ascended, but his voice held no command, his hands no strength. Courtiers bowed low, not just in respect, but in calculation. With Henry gone, alliances would shift like sand. Those who had survived his reign now faced a new game, one ruled not by fear, but by ambition hidden behind silk and smiles. Henry's funeral was massive, but cold. Behind the pageantry, golden banners, black horses, tolling bells, there was no true mourning. Few dared speak ill of him, but fewer wept. His coffin was so large it had to be specially constructed. As it moved through the streets toward Windsor, crowds watched in silence. Some crossed themselves. Others turned away. Inside the abbey, a sermon praised his strength and leadership, but in hushed corners, people spoke of wives lost, friends executed, and a kingdom reshaped by one man's fury and fear. Henry's death didn't bring peace. It opened a power vacuum. England was still torn between Catholics and Protestants, between nobility and crown. Young Edward VI sat on the throne, a puppet in the hands of men more interested in control than guidance. Meanwhile, rumors spread that Henry's ghost haunted the halls of Hampton Court, that his soul found no rest, that the crown had been cursed by too much blood. Whether true or not, one thing was clear: Henry's legacy wasn't just laws and reforms. It was fear. It was division. It was unfinished. Though gone, Henry VIII's fingerprints remained on every corner of England. He had broken from Rome, dissolved monasteries, rewritten faith itself, all to satisfy power, pride, and personal obsession. His 6 marriages redefined royal politics. His paranoia reshaped justice. Even in death, the laws he passed and the enemies he made continued to shape the realm. He was remembered not as a man, but as a force, a storm, a ruler who left scars deeper than swords. And yet, many still called him father of the English Reformation. Centuries have passed, yet King Henry VIII remains one of the most iconic and haunting figures in British history. His portrait still hangs in palaces. His decisions still echo through English law, and his story still captures the imagination of millions. He ruled not with love, but with fire, not with grace, but with iron. And in his final days, the man who once stood unchallenged faced the one truth no king can rewrite. Death is the great equalizer. His throne endured, but the man who built it was swallowed by the weight of his own legend. Asterisk.